and welcome from the Senior Law Day Collaborative. My name is Melinda Bellis, and I'm the attorney in charge at Legal Services of the Hudson Valley's Yonkers office. I'm also a co-chair of the Senior Law Day Collaborative. I share this role with Elena Falcone from the Westchester Library Systems and Sarah Steckler from Keen & Bean. You've joined us today to learn about protecting your privacy, staying safe while navigating the internet. But first, let me tell you a little bit about the collaborative and the resources available to you. The collaborative is comprised of more than 150 professionals who are all eager to bring authoritative information on legal, financial, and health topics to our county's older adults. We make available educational workshops throughout the year, as well as brief one-on-one consultations with collaborative professionals. You can connect with our resources and services through our website, seniorlawday.info. The site is a resource for information on legal and financial topics addressed by the collaborative. You can go there to watch the video recordings of prior webinars, access printed reference materials such as our excellent annual updated elder law Q&A, and send us your questions on any topic of concern to older adults. Just look for the Ask Us button on the site. Send us your contact information and a rough outline of your question, and we'll work promptly to connect you with the needed expertise. Now, before we turn to today's presenter, a few points about the format in which we're working today. This Zoom video conferencing event is being recorded with the aim of posting the recording to the Senior Law Day site. You as participants are muted, but you can ask questions by using the Q&A box on the bottom of your Zoom window. We may not be able to get to all of the questions that are posted, but unless you choose to ask anonymously, we will work to follow up with you through email following the presentation. You might also save your question and use that Ask Us button on the Senior Law Day website. Now I'll turn this presentation over to today's presenter, Rob Caluori, who's the Director of Transformation and Strategic Operations for the Westchester Library System. Rob.
Good morning. Just want to make sure, Melinda, you can see the presentation?
I can.
Excellent. So as Melinda said, I'm Rob Caluori. I'm the Director of Transformation and Strategic Operation at Westchester Library System. I'll also make a note that I am wearing headphones, and that is so that you can hear me better because they have a better microphone built into them than the one built into my laptop. And I'll advance my slide here. The first thing that is very important to know about this presentation is that it is an informational presentation only. It is got no warranty or guarantee of any kind. We're going to talk about a lot of ways that you can protect yourself online, but it is not by any means the only ways you can protect yourself online, and it is not meant to be an all-inclusive. So this is meant to be a primer for you to go out and then do your own research and find what works best for you. A little bit about me and Westchester Library System. Westchester Library System is a cooperative of 38 member libraries. Each of the libraries in Westchester County are independent entities, and they work together to share services and in the end save taxpayers many, many dollars by doing things as a group. About me, I have master's degrees in information systems and information science. I've been at Westchester Library System for the last 13 years, serving in various roles, both in and out of IT. And I'm currently the Director of Transformation and Strategic Operations. Prior to that, I was the Director of IT. So why are we here? Why care about privacy at all? This quote, which I will read, is from Edward Snowden, who is arguably a controversial figure, but made a very good point when discussing privacy when he said, arguing that you don't care about the right to privacy because you have nothing to hide is no different than saying you don't care about free speech because you have nothing to say. In essence, what he's saying here is just because you don't think that your information is valuable doesn't mean that it isn't. There are bad actors out there who are constantly looking to grab as much information about you as they can in order to build a profile. And we'll talk later on in the presentation why these profiles are used and built, whether it be for stealing your identity or to build marketing profiles in order to target you better with advertising. But all of these things are important, even if you don't think the fact that you went on vacation last week is important. Where and when and why you went all might give clues to a potential attacker as to how to go about taking your information. So today we have a pretty packed agenda. We're going to talk about risks in the cloud, and we're spend a good deal of time talking about the cloud and the myths that surround the cloud. We're going to talk about email and how email is mostly insecure and gives the illusion of security when in fact it is not. We'll talk about passwords and what constitutes a good password, and demystify some of the myths around passwords as well. And then finally, we'll talk about how to use the web in a little bit more secure way. And if time permits, we'll get into why all of this is important. And throughout the presentation, as Melinda said at the top, I'm going to encourage you to please use the chat or Q&A features. This is an interactive presentation. You are encouraged to ask questions, and let's make this a more personal experience, make this a more relevant experience. So if anytime along the way you have questions, we can answer them as we go or at the end, depending on what's most appropriate. So first, the cloud. The first thing I'll tell you is that there is no such thing as the magical cloud. The cloud itself is a myth. So we're gonna let the cloud burn away and tell you that there is no magical cloud. The cloud is simply public cloud servers that you can't see or touch or control. Servers have been online since the beginning of the internet, and only recently do we now start calling this the cloud. And it's to make you have this illusion that it's this safe, comfy place, when in fact it is the same servers that you can't see or touch or control, versus say your own server that you can see, you can touch, you can control. And what do I mean by that? Well, for example, with Facebook, if you put your information on Facebook, you no longer control that information. When you post a picture there, you grant Facebook an unlimited license to use that picture as much as they want to, in whatever way they want. And even if you close your account, they still retain that right to use all of your content as they see fit, not as you see fit. And there's no way to delete everything because you don't know what's been captured, you don't know what's been reshared, you don't know what's been, for instance, in the case of Twitter, retweeted. Once it's out there forever. And in fact, there are companies that make their entire living off of archiving what goes on Facebook and Twitter and other social media platforms and preserving it for all time, for everything from job searches to all kinds of other investigations. Finally, the other myth about the cloud that we're going to demystify with facts is that there are two kinds of clouds, in fact, public and private clouds. And we're going to dig into the first, which is the public cloud. This is your traditional internet-based service. You have here on the left your PC. This is where you have your house with your printers and your laptops and your tablets. And through the internet, you connect to some web service, whether it be to store your photos or to access maybe an office product online. A perfect example here being right now, I'm presenting you this presentation through Office 365, which is a web-based office product. And you may even have documents online, services like Grammarly, who read through your documents and make recommendations to you on spelling and grammar and better words to use. All of these services are on servers, again, that you can't see or touch or control. You simply use them with the terms of service dictated to you by the provider. And all of them are accessed over the internet. The main point here being that if you lose the internet, you also lose access to the service. So there's the privacy risk, and there's also the risk of loss of access. This as opposed to the private cloud. Now, what happens with the private cloud is you take those services that you are accessing through the internet and you host them yourself. And what do we mean by host? It means you install it in your own home or maybe out in the garage or in the basement and host these services for yourself. In the example of maybe say photo storage, perhaps you buy a network storage device that you keep on your home network. Now, whenever you want to upload pictures to it, you just have to be on your home network. None of your pictures traverse the internet. You don't need an internet connection active in order to download them or to see them or to view them. And if you pull the device off your network, that device is now offline. You don't have to have a concern about who's taken it, who might have still have control over it. If it's sitting on some backup somewhere, being maintained by the service provider that you once had, once it's on your network, you know it belongs to you. Now, that said, you have to develop a cloud strategy that works for you. There's no right or wrong answer. It's a very personal decision. I'm not going to sit here and sit on my mighty horse and say that all public cloud services are bad and you have to replicate everything in your own private cloud at home. It's just not practical. It may be practical for some people based on their use cases, but for most of us, there's probably going to be a balance, a blend between the two. You may decide there is a place for the public cloud in your life. And the way we do that is you weigh the risks, the costs, and the benefits of building your own versus buying. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's take backing up your desktop, for example. You have a desktop computer at home. It has, say, a 1 terabyte hard drive. You could go out and buy a 4 terabyte hard drive and use that for backup. And that drive might cost you under $200. Whereas a backup service in the cloud might cost you almost that much every single year. Well, if you buy 2 of those drives and rotate through them and keep one off-site, because the other nice thing about the cloud is that the backup is off-site, so you'd want to replicate that service. Keep one, in a safe deposit box or in a secure location that's not inside your home, say perhaps a friend's home or a child's home, and have them keep a copy for you. Then you could replicate the service for relatively the same cost, with relatively the same amount of risk and relatively the same amount of benefit. That's an equal service. That can't be said for every service. For example, photo sharing requires a lot more technology in place in order to not only store your photos, but share them.
We have a question. Can't a private cloud be located out on the net somewhere?
It can. But the question is then, if it's out on the net, where is it? If you're simply paying for somebody to host it for you, well, then that's a public cloud service in and of itself. It might be more restricted in use, and you might be able to get more reasonable assurances that your privacy is being tended to. But again, are they backing that up? Where are those backups being kept? Could your data be accidentally restored if they tried to restore from that backup? Is it a target, more of a target for being hacked than your own private cloud that you host yourself? So there's a lot of questions there.
Thank you.
So the answer is it could be. It could be. Be selective of what you put where. This is again part of your cloud strategy. You may choose to have certain things backed up in the cloud. That doesn't mean you would choose to have everything backed up in the cloud. I'll give you an example. You might choose to have all of your Word documents that contain really nothing private at all, personal correspondence and things like that out in the cloud. You might choose to have your your household budget on Excel, backed up on the cloud, and that's fine. But perhaps that Excel spreadsheet that you keep with all of your passwords, maybe that one you don't put out in the cloud. Your PDFs of all your tax returns, maybe that's something you choose not to back up in the cloud. So it's important to remember that you don't want to paint all files with the same brush. You want to take a more strategic look at all of the files you have and what you put where, and develop a cloud strategy for yourself that protects your information. The other big consideration with build versus buy is that private cloud services need to function as reliably as the public competitor. Let's go back to that desktop backup. If you simply choose to buy one backup drive and keep it in your home, well, you're losing the off-site backup part of that backup strategy. Part of the reason we back up our computer is not just for viruses or for hardware failures, but for that heaven forbid possibility that your house burns to the ground. You want to be able to recover all of your files if you lose the place where your files are kept, including the home in which the computer is kept. And so you want to make sure that your private services function as well as your public cloud services. So for example, if you want to back up to a network storage device in your home, perhaps you establish a connection with a second device stored somewhere else that you can control to back that up. You may find when you start building out all of that technology that it might just be cheaper and easier to purchase a cloud backup service for your computer. You just have to choose one that has the level of security with which you are comfortable. And remember, functionality is not just speed, it's security, performance, and capacity. If you buy a storage device, you have to make sure that that storage device will either grow with you or understand that you might be absorbing additional costs down the line to expand it as your storage needs grow. And all this time I've been talking about backups. It's so important. Always keep a backup. Even if you're using the cloud as a backup, you're going to want an extra backup. Why? Well, things happen in the cloud. Services go down, services go out of business, services fail and then can't recover from their backups. And if you read the fine print, many of them have very little or no liability at all for your data if they lose it. So you want to make sure to have a backup. And having backups is also important as an antivirus strategy, which we're going to talk about in a little while. So let's talk about email. Email is one of the oldest services that is online. And as such, it was never built with security in mind. In fact, one of the things about the internet as a whole that people sometimes forget is that the internet was built to be an open platform. It was never built with security in mind. And so all of these security procedures and mechanisms that we've been building into the internet over the last few years are all being shoehorned into a system that was never meant to be secure. It was always meant to be an open system. And that is very true about email. In fact, email is probably the least secure service out on the internet today. At least it can be argued. Email, for example, the subject and the body text are sent in plain text, meaning anybody that intercepts that message between the sender and the receiver can actually read the entire email in full, both the subject and the body. And that doesn't mean all emails, but it's emails that are sent from one service to another. So what do I mean by that? For example, a lot of us use Gmail, Google Mail. Well, when you send an email from one Google Mail user to another Google Mail user, that doesn't leave the Google ecosystem. And so it is secure because Google is a secure system in and of itself. So the message never leaves there. And so it's always been maintained inside of Google's secure service. However, if you go to send that email to another user, say in another service, say Yahoo Mail, which is also a secure service, and all of the email messages from Yahoo users to other Yahoo users are also secure. But when a message has to go from service to service, that email needs to traverse over the internet, and it does so in plain text, where the body and the subject are fully open to view to anybody who tries to intercept it. So the next fact about email is even if your connection to your service is secure, the service is not. Again, you might see that, Rob, there's that lock in the corner when I log into my email. It says HTTPS. My connection is secure. Well, your connection to your email service is secure. The text that you're sending back and forth between your computer and the server of the service you're using is secure. Everything being sent to and from that server to your computer is secure. But when you go to, say, send that email to your bank, and it has to go from Gmail over to your bank's email service, that email is not secure. That email is traversing the internet in plain text. And then
Rob, can I interrupt? You just brought up banking, and there's a question about that.
Let's go.
Is online banking more secure from your home PC than from your cell phone or iPad?
I would say it's no more or less secure from a PC than from a tablet or any other device. There are security risks with banking online. Obviously, it's less secure than walking up to the teller. But the same measures you can put in place to make it the safest experience possible on a PC can also be applied to tablets and smartphones and things of the like. In fact, it might be a little bit more secure on a device like a tablet or a smartphone than on a PC, because many of the viral risks, and I'm not saying tablets and smartphones are free from viruses, in fact, they're far from it, but some of the risks can be mitigated better on a smartphone or tablet than on a PC. And that is because of the use of app stores. PCs, you can install a program from any website on a PC, from any unverified person, and that can contain a virus. Whereas on your device, you're locked down to that device's app store. And Apple and Google do a fairly good job of screening the apps that go into that app store in advance to protect you from viruses. Again, not 100%. There's always one that might slip through the cracks, and there are examples in history where it's happened. But it's a more secure environment than a general use PC. I think we had another question coming as well.
The next question, what about DuckDuckGo?
Oh, DuckDuckGo is a search engine that doesn't sell your personal data. And we'll talk about it a little bit more later, but it's a great time to talk about it now as well. Search engines collect data on you. In fact, it's fairly well known that Google can personally identify you within 2 searches. And depending on whether or not you're also providing your location information, they might even be able to identify you within 1 search. We are that predictable as users. We generally go online and search the same things or the same types of things every time we go online. And so companies like Google, remember, Google may operate a search engine, but it is also an advertising company. They make their revenue on advertising and building advertising profiles and selling those to businesses to try to capture business. DuckDuckGo, they're also in that business. However, they do not sell your personal identifiable information. They are only selling that information in generic form. And so it is, in a way, protecting your privacy to a much greater extent than the more personalized advertising that happens through Google. And not just Google, not to pick on Google. They're not the only search engine that does this. I hope that answered your question. Finally, the third fact about email is that email addresses can be spoofed. There is no such thing as a verified sender. If you see anything in an email that says, this email has been verified, sent from, it's a lie. It's already a red flag that it's a scam. I could send you emails right now from any address. I could send you an email from trustedadvisor@yourbank.com, and it would look and feel real. And you could send emails from collections@irs.gov, and it could look and feel real. Email addresses can be spoofed or faked. And scammers use this flaw in email all of the time in order to try to capture your attention through fear and intimidation and get you to fork over either money or information like passwords or social security numbers or things of the like. Now, that's not to say that the world isn't aware of this happening, and most email services try to verify. They make what's called a callback to the server that it looks like it's coming from to see if that user is a real user, or if the server that sent it is actually the server that is supposed to have sent it. And that's how a lot of these messages end up in your spam folder, or services like Gmail and Ymail and some of the leading, and Microsoft Mail, some of the leading email services out there. Believe it or not, there is a folder even further beyond your spam folder. There are some messages that don't make it into your inbox at all. So when an email comes in, it gets graded. And based on things like verifying the sender or the sender's server, some of the keywords that are in there, some of the other aspects of the email, it will get flagged as either okay to deliver to your inbox. Hey, this is spam. Let me throw it in his spam folder or her spam folder or their spam folder. Or this one is so far beyond the pale that I am not even going to grace it with presence in the spam folder, and it gets trashed completely. Services do a pretty good job of protecting you from these emails, but every once in a while, one will slip through. Just to continue some of the discussion on the risks, email is open to the internet, as we said. Be aware that when you send an email, it can be read en route. That's why you never want to send an email, for example, with usernames and passwords in the same email. Send two separate emails, one with the username, one with the password. If you have to share such information with somebody, disconnect that information so that it's not in the same place. Email messages can contain viruses and other threats. So I already mentioned data collection, but also the attachments. Emails come with attachments all the time, and it's almost instinct for us to click on that attachment to see that picture or that document or that spreadsheet. Well, be a little more careful about what you click on, and especially if it looks risky, because if it looks risky, it very well may be risky. Also, and this is a attack used by a lot of virus propagation emails out there, are links. They'll send you an email. Oh, this software that you have needs an update. Click here to download the update so that you have the most secure version. So there's the fear and intimidation, right? You need to click this link to download this new software, otherwise you're going to be insecure. And what it actually is doing is bringing you to a place where you're going to download a virus. So be aware of those. Now, there are solutions to all of these things. And the most important one is be judicious with what you open. Read through it. If it smells like a fish and looks like a fish, it might be a phishing email. If it doesn't seem in character with the person emailing you, chances are it's not. And what do I mean by not in character with the person? Well, for example, I'll use my own life. My mother will very rarely send me an email where she asks me for money. She'll very rarely send me an email where she says she's traveling and is stuck in a foreign country and needs money. My mother would call me if that was the issue. So if I get an email from my mother that says, hey, I'm trapped in Scotland and I need $1,000, well, I'm going to say to myself, this is not in character with the sender. My mother would call me. She wouldn't email me. She probably wouldn't email me at all. She would pick up the phone first. So let me pick up the phone and verify what I'm seeing here. If it doesn't sound correct, it's probably not correct. Don't overshare in email. If somebody is talking to you and you know the person, just be careful with what you share, because if it's intercepted en route, you might be giving away way too much. Be familiar with the norms of your trusted circle. I gave the example of my mother, but also be familiar with things that, for example, your bank would do or won't do. Would your bank email you? A lot of banks now send messages in the mail that says, we will never email you. We will never ask you for your PIN number by email or by phone. Read these messages and be familiar with them so that when a very well-dressed message comes through email from your bank that's asking you to do something like this, you know that it's wrong. I will give a real-life example. I got a phone call from somebody very close to me that says, I got an email from my bank today, and I won't say the bank. And it looks absolutely correct, and it's got the right logo, and it's got their address at the bottom, and it looks exactly like every email I've ever gotten from them, but it's asking me to enter my debit card number and PIN. Should I do it? Absolutely not. Do not enter a single thing. In fact, why don't you call your bank and ask them if they want to see that email? Well, the bank did, because they wanted to use it for an investigation. They were aware of the scam, and it was an absolutely a scam. And so we provided it to the bank for their investigation, and then we deleted the email from their email account. And the most important thing is, if it feels suspicious, trust yourself. Don't say, oh, I'm probably wrong, it's probably fine. If it feels wrong to you, trust your instincts. It's probably wrong.
Is it safer to use a bank app or a bank website for paying credit cards?
I think it's about the same risk as long as you are familiar with the site and making sure that you connect to it safely. And what do I mean by that? It's become common habit for a lot of people to not use the address bar at the top of your browser to type in an address. There is a difference between typing, for example, my bank versus going to www.mybank.com. And then clicking on, rather than doing the direct address entry, doing a search and clicking on it through your search results. That's more risky because search engines can have instances where malicious websites rise to the top in a search results, and you risk clicking on the wrong address and then entering your login information into an illegitimate site. You're best served by going to the website directly by typing the full address of the website in your address bar. That said, on a device, you can't make that mistake. You know that you got the app from the trusted source. You know it's from your bank. You tap on the app and you log in. So when I was talking before about the more secure ecosystem of your device, that's exactly how it plays out, is that you already know that where you're going is the right place because you've gotten that app from the trusted source and you're logging in the same place every time versus typing it into the address bar. So with email, I have a slogan I go by, and it's a 1-minute phone call will save you days of heartache. The insurance companies online like to tell you 15 minutes or more. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. A 1-minute phone call will save you days of heartache with email. And I alluded to this before. What do I mean? I get this email, hey, Dad, I need $1,000. My car broke down. I'm on vacation in Georgia, and I need to get this repair job, and the mechanic needs $1,000 cash right now. Can you Western Union me $1,000 right now? And you're ready to go and somehow get this money down to whoever's sending you this email. Pick up the phone. It's 2020. Everybody has a cell phone. Everybody has a cell phone at this point. Call the cell phone. Give a text. Call a friend that's nearby and say, hey, I got this email. Is there any validity to it? If they say yes, well, then you have your call to action right there. If they say no, delete that email. You know it's a scam, because that 1-minute phone call could save you days of trying to get your money back through disputes with your credit card company or your bank. It could save you days of trying to recover your computer from a virus after it's crashed using your backups. It could save you a lifetime of heartache trying to repair your credit report if your identity gets stolen somehow by entering your social security number somewhere it shouldn't be entered. So always take a moment, step back, think, wait, can I make a phone call and verify any of this? The answer more than likely is yes. You can call your bank and say, I got this email, and they'll tell you yes or no. You can call your son, daughter, aunt, uncle, cousin, and say, did you send me this email? Yes or no, and take your action from there. Always, always, always call and reach out and make sure before you enter a piece of data that might cause you days and days and even a lifetime of heartache. And so the next one is ransomware. Facts about ransomware. And one of the most common ways ransomware gets propagated is through email. And that's why we follow up the email discussion with a discussion about ransomware. If you've never heard of it, ransomware, in my opinion, is the worst kind of virus. All viruses are bad, but ransomware is truly the worst. And why do I believe that? And it's because of how it works. Ransomware uses your own computer to take your own files and hold them hostage to take your money. What happens with a ransomware virus is that once it enters your computer, it searches your computer for your most prized and valued files. They know how to look for pictures and Word documents, the things that we all keep on our computer that are most prized, our grandchild's pictures, our pictures of our parents, videos of those first steps, documents that have all of our most important information like paper, passwords and mortgage papers and things like that. And what it does is it locks them up with a password. It encrypts them, meaning it makes the data unreadable through normal means and locks them with a password. And then it'll show a picture on the screen that says, hey, we now have all of your data and we're happy to give it back to you as long as you wire or use Bitcoin to send X number of dollars to this address. There was a virus a few years back now called WannaCry. It was a ransomware virus that literally made you want to cry. It did this, it locked all of your files, it presented you with a ransom, and then it said, you have 24 hours to comply or the ransom will go up. And you would laugh it off, and then the next day you'd come on your computer and it would say, okay, the ransom went from $750 to $1,500. And you have 24 hours or it's going up again. And it would go up from $1,500 to $3,000. And then they would say, you have 24 hours to comply or we're deleting all of your files. And then after 24 hours, it would delete all of your files. And there's no way around it. You're not cracking that password. So the first fact about ransomware that's very important to remember is there is no way around it. Once they've encrypted your files, you're not decrypting them or de-encrypting them. So fact number 2, be proactive. Think before you click. That virus, once on your computer, acts very quickly. In moments, it has captured all of your files. Within a few more moments, all of those files are encrypted, and it is too late. Excuse me. It is too late. Now you have to find a way around. And there is a way around. You might not be able to ever crack that password and get your files back from the ransomware, but if you make your PC disposable through good backups, the ransomware doesn't affect you at all. And here's how. You accidentally click on that link, you get that message, hey, we have your files, give us $2,500 in Bitcoin, or you're never gonna have access to your files again. And that's when you, from watching this presentation and going out and making sure you get backups for your computer, can laugh and say, okay. And you erase your computer down to bare, you restore Windows from scratch, and you restore all your files from a backup, and you say, I've recovered from the ransomware virus, I'm good to go. I think we had a question come in.
Is ransomware device specific?
Yes and no. They are programs, so they are written for operating systems. They are operating system specific. And so most of them are in Windows. Windows is the most vulnerable, only because it's the largest market share. Most computers out in the world are Windows, so most viruses are written for Windows. But don't let being on another operating system like Linux or Mac or a tablet or smartphone operating system lull you into a false sense of security. Viruses can be written for any platform. So once again, just to sum up, the most important thing you can do to protect yourself from ransomware is have a backup. Have all of those files backed up and easily restorable, and practice your restore function. It's not good enough just to back it up and say, oh, I have my stuff backed up, I'm good, I don't have to worry about it. Every once in a while, you should practice restoring from that backup to make sure that A, your backups are running correctly, and B, that you know how to. Because I've gotten that phone call as well. Hey, Rob, I did exactly what you said. I got a ransomware virus, I erased my computer, and now I'm trying to restore from my backup, and I can't. It's saying the backup is corrupted. I don't have the program to restore it. I can't load the driver for the drive that I used for my backup. The device won't connect. What do I do? Well, at that point, we're kind of in a bit of a pickle, and we're going to have to engineer a solution to get that backup working. And that can be mitigated most of the time by being fluent in how to restore from a backup. Once you practice it once or twice, you'll be familiar with it, and it'll have more of a second nature feeling than having done it for the first time.
Rob, we have a follow-up question. Someone's confirming. If I have a laptop and a desktop, both will not be affected if they're on different operating systems?
That's not a guarantee at all. If they're on different operating systems, there's a better chance, but that doesn't mean that one is immune from the viruses that affect another. Viruses, there are different kinds of viruses out there. There are viruses that once on one computer can morph. They have code to affect all different kinds of operating systems, and they'll try to detect what you have and then launch an appropriate attack. So don't let the kind of operating system you choose be done so because you think it'll make you immune to a virus. It may help, but it's not a surefire cure.
Oh, thank you.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is passwords. What makes a good password? How do we keep track of our passwords? What's a good password strategy? Well, the first thing we'll say, and it's a very important note, is that multi-term passwords are better than single complicated ones. And what does that mean? Here's an example here. It's from a comic strip from many, many years ago, and I'll show it on the next slide. But it shows you 4 words that have nothing to do with one another, that are strung together, versus a password like a password we're used to seeing. So the first password is correct horse battery staple. 4 words strung together, all lowercase. Believe it or not, that is a much better password than the next one, which is library with a 1 and a capital L and an @ sign and a capital R and an exclamation point at the end. And why is that? Because those are what are called common substitutions. Attackers can guess a dictionary term with common number and symbol replacement substitutions very easily. The programs that they use to crack passwords are fully aware of capital L versus lowercase l, 1s for I's, @ signs for A's, and throwing an exclamation point at the end of any single dictionary word. So choosing 4 words lengthens the password, and the longer the password is, the better off you are. But it's also important that those 4 words have little or no personal meaning. The less personal meaning they have, the better off you are. And the best way to do that is to get random words. instead of words that are meaningful to you. Again, don't use correct horse battery staple. Everybody knows that one. But using that as the example of 4 random words would be better for me than, say, library and New York, Westchester books. Well, because I'm a librarian, I live in Westchester, New York, and I work at the library. It's not gonna work as a good password. But 4 random words, like door, grass, sky, red, 4 words that have nothing to do with one another or with me, have much more effectiveness as a password. And so where do you get these passwords? Well, there's a couple of different ways. You can go online and download huge word lists and then use what's called Diceware to randomly select words for you. And if you just go onto Google and search Diceware password tool, you'll find many, many sites that will continuously generate anywhere between 4 and as many words as you want in a row from random word lists. And you string those together and you now have a nice complicated password. There's also a much less technological way to get these Diceware passwords. If you have a dictionary in the house, open the dictionary to a random page and go ahead and plop your finger on a word and write that word down, and then turn to another random page and do the same thing, and do that 4 times until you have 4 completely random words. That's what Diceware does. It's just saving you the time of pulling out a dictionary and doing it manually. It's pulling 4 random words from a word list. Slang terms are dictionary terms. Most slang words that you are familiar with are in the Oxford English Dictionary, are in most dictionary terms that dictionary lists that hackers use to try to crack passwords. Non-dictionary terms are stronger. Non-slang, non-dictionary words. Gibberish words. And what do I mean by a gibberish word? Well, if you've ever listened to a young baby learning to talk, they will often come up with words that make no sense to us. Write those words down. Write them down phonetically and have words like that handy, because those words strung together make excellent passwords because they're in no dictionary that any hacker has access to. And here's the comic that I was referring to. This is from a website called xkcd.com. They post comic strips that are of a scientific or technology or math nature. It's Comics for Geeks, and quite a few years back, they posted this comic that has everything to do with password strength. And so in the first square here, you see a very common password that we would enter into, say, our banking website. It'll pass the test. Most of these websites have tests now to see if your password is good enough. And let's see, it has a capital T, and it has a number, and it has a symbol, it has upper lowercase. This is a great password. Troubadour and 3. It has all of the common things we're looking for. Well, here's what's wrong with it. It has an uncommon but non-gibberish base word. It has all the common substitutions, unfortunately. It has caps and numerical and punctuation. And this password has what we refer to as 28 bits of entropy. Entropy is the measure of disorder in a system. So this password has 28 bits of disorder. When this comic was published many, many years ago, it had been measured up against some of the password cracking software of the time, and it would take 3 days at 1,000 guesses a second to crack. That time has been shortened up dramatically over the last few years. Password crackers now guess at 10,000 guesses a second or more. And so 3 days is actually shortened to a few hours. And so easy for a computer to guess, easy for a hacker running a script to guess. And here's us in the next frame. Was it trombone or was it troubadour? Did I substitute a 0 for the O? What was the symbol? Was it ampersand or exclamation point? So Easy for the computer to guess, hard for us to remember. Then on the lower half of the comic, we have that correct horse battery staple. 4 random words. But because of the length alone, this password has 44 bits of entropy. And using that same 1,000 guesses a second, it will now take 550 years for the computer to guess that password. And it's much easier for us to remember because it's 4 words with no replacements, no numerics, nothing of the sort. Hey, that's a battery staple. Correct. Correct horse battery staple. See, you've already memorized it. And after this presentation, you'll go home and remember correct horse battery staple. I guarantee it. Current wisdom is add a 5th word. Extend the entropy, add a 5th word, because the password crackers are improving every day and getting faster and faster. And that 550 years has been shortened to a couple of days or a couple of weeks. Still harder, but you want to get that 5th word in there or even a 6th word in there so that you can have as much security as possible. And then if your banking website requires you to have an upper and a lower and a symbol and a number, you can put those at the end too. But at least you'll have the main part of the password easier to remember for you and harder for the computer to guess. Things you need to know about the web: your ISP, your internet service provider, can see and log every URL you visit. Every website you visit knows who you are through your IP address, which could also approximate your location. HTTP versus HTTPS, the S is for secure and protects the page. So, for example, your credit card information is secure between your computer and the server, but it doesn't protect the URL. Your ISP, your internet service provider, can still log everywhere you go. And that's where Tor Browser comes in. Tor Browser uses a set of relays, random relays, to mask where you are and where you're going. And so in quick fashion, since we're running out of time, you find you an entrance relay that takes your internet request, passes it to a middleman who doesn't know who you are and doesn't know where you're going, and then the exit relay obtains the website you want, but doesn't know that it's you asking for it. And so this game of hot potato goes back and forth over the internet between you, 3 relays, and the website you're going to in order to obfuscate who you are and where you're going so that only you get the information you want and nobody else can track you. And why does any of this matter? Well, websites and ISPs want to collect info to build marketing profiles about you so that they can target you and sell this information so that advertisers can get more access to you. Nothing online is free. You pay with your personal information currency. Now, again, I'm not going to sit on my horse and tell you where to spend your personal information currency, your information cash, if you will. It's a personal decision. You may choose a free service is worth giving away your date of birth or your phone number, and no one should judge you for that. That's a decision you make for yourself. But you should be aware of it when you do it. You should be conscious of what you spend with your information currency. On this slide, I've given you the links to the things that I've mentioned in this presentation, and I'll leave that up for the duration of our time together while we answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Rob. This was amazing. I personally learned a lot from the cloud information to coming up with secure passwords. Really appreciate this. And happily, this recording will be available on the seniorlawday.info website within a day or so, along with the presentation slides. I want to turn this over to Bruce a moment for an announcement from him.
Thank you, Melinda. Just bear with me while I share my screen. Hopefully folks can folks see this now. We just want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. We had meant to show this. We had a special program last week. We had meant to show this, but we had just so much content. So I'm just going to leave this up, until we end, which will be in a moment. And I just had, Melinda, if there's not questions from the audience, I just had one more question, Rob. Yeah. Which is, do you think for, I heard a little bit of this specific to the security on one aspect, but do you think in general, as people get older, should they be migrating away from computers and laptops and towards tablets and phones? I mean, I've heard some of that happens, anyway, but I just wanted to ask that more specifically.
Yes, I highly recommend it.
Interesting.
But because of the secure ecosystem of a device, and you have to choose that device carefully. You don't just want to do a technology dump and run on grandma or grandpa. You want to make sure that it's a device that they know how to use, so a little training goes a long way, and a device that has a secure ecosystem. Not all tablets are built alike. Apple products, for example, which I criticize a lot, have a very safe ecosystem. It's very hard to run into trouble on an Apple device. Not all Android devices, which I'm a big fan of, are built alike. Some of them have app stores beyond the Google App Store on them. And so you have to be mindful that bad actors can get their apps on one app store and not another, will target those weaker app stores. So you want to make sure that if you buy an Android device, you restrict it to app stores you trust, like the Google Play Store.
We do just have one more question that I want to make sure we get to. Is the external hard drive, the terms external hard drive and backup, are they interchangeable terms, Rob?
No, they're not interchangeable terms, but they are certainly very related. You would use an external hard drive to store your backup, but you can also use an external hard drive for other things. For example, portable storage if you want to run from one computer to another or one location to another. So they're not the same term, but they are very related.
So I'll just turn it over to Melinda if you want to wrap up. I think we're good, unless you see other questions.
I don't see any other questions. I want to thank you again very much, Rob, and remind our viewers that if you have a question for our presenter or any member of the Senior Law Day Collaborative, please just hit that Ask Us button on the Senior Law Day website. And thank you for joining us.